London, 1926. The city breathes coal and fog, a maze of squares and terraces where money buys silence and servants know when not to look up. In Belgrave Square, a limestone townhouse stands button-tight behind ironwork railings, its brass number polished to a mirror each morning by a porter who never meets anyone's eyes for long. Inside, the Crawfords dine at 8, retire at 10, and trust the seals and bolts of modern living to do what they were designed to do: keep the world out. Eleanor Nell Crawford, 22, is the kind of heiress newspapers invent adjectives for: the charitable sort, the independent sort, the sort who reads reviews of Bloomsbury novels and then buys all three just to disagree. Her fortune isn't a myth. It is ledgers and estates and a trust built on shipping and rails, the prosperity of an empire delivered in dividends each quarter. But prosperity attracts gravity, and gravity attracts orbiters, suitors, agents, reformers with pamphlets, cousins with ventures that can't fail except that they do. On a blustery Saturday in late November, the household recites the same liturgy: a charity gala at the Savoy, a photograph taken on the marble stair, a column the next morning praising Miss Crawford's modern taste and discreet wit. She smiles in the print and folds the paper away. But later, alone in a third-floor study converted from a dressing room, she writes a letter on heavy monogram stationery. The wind rattles the window latch, new brass on old sash, and somewhere 2 floors down, the night porter runs the bolt across the front door. Belgrave Square sleeps behind its locks as it always has. At 11:48 p.m., the maid of chambers, Miss Tally, knocks and brings hot water. She notes a small stack of clippings, a burglary in Mayfair, a sensational locked room murder across the river, and jokes that London's imagination has gotten ahead of itself again. Nell laughs and presses a book to her chest, something American and scandalous. Miss Tally withdraws, the hot water steaming in the jug, and hears the unmistakable snick of the interior lock turned from within. It is the sound of privacy in any era. At midnight precisely, the porter mounts to the second-floor landing and tests each casement window in the stair hall, the way he's done since the house got its new insurance policy. Downstairs, he opens the front door, peers into the square, and bolts it again: the top bolt, the bottom one, and the new Yale with its glossy chain. He fills out his log with a pencil gone to nub and notes: all secured, 12:05 a.m. He signs his name and yawns. At 7:10 a.m., the cook starts the range. At 7:30, Miss Tally returns to the third-floor study with tea and a quiet knock. No answer. She knocks again, harder. Still nothing. She tries the handle and finds it locked. She bends, peers at the keyhole, and finds the key resting snug in place on the inside. A housemaid runs for the butler for Mr. Crawford, Mr. Crawford for a spare key that opens nothing because there is no spare that can overcome a key seated in the inner lock. By 7:50, a carpenter's boy is summoned and instructed to remove the brass handle plate without splintering the door. His hands are quick, his eyes are wide. He withdraws 2 screws, eases the plate aside, and in the gap glimpses soft light from a window. The butler hisses, "Careful!" The boy slides a long wire in, nudges the key on the other side until it falls to the carpet with a tiny clink, then pushes the inner latch with a flat blade. The door opens inward. The room is empty, a cup cold. The window latch, the catch unbroken, sash cord intact. No balcony. 3 stories down. The rear garden, stiff with frost. On the desk, a letter unfinished, dated with yesterday's hand, the ink dried to a brown sheen. A scarf over the chair back, a fur-lined wrap on a stand by the door. In the fireplace, ash too fine to be last night's coal alone. Paper, maybe. The bed in the adjoining chamber unslept. Eleanor's shoes are gone. Her evening pair is missing, but the front door is still bolted, top and bottom, and the night porter swears he would have heard the chain. A lock that was locked from within. Windows that were latched. No other exit. The neighborhood police sergeant arrives shortly after 8, examines the room, squints at the sash for pry marks, and finally steps back, making the pronouncement that will haunt the case: an impossible disappearance. London, a city raised on fog and headlines, supplies the other word: locked room. The newspapers arrive before the inspector does. Scotland Yard dispatches a man with an eye for stagecraft and small lies, who makes a show of asking the servants their names twice, and the butler his once. "Locked from inside?" he asks. The butler nods, shows the log. 12:05 a.m., all secured. The inspector bends to the fireplace ash, lifts a pinch with his penknife, and smears it on a blotting page. Too fine for coal alone. Someone burned letters after midnight. He takes statements. Miss Tally heard the interior lock turn at around 1:15 to midnight. The porter logged the bolts after 12. No one unbolted the door before 7:50 when it was opened from the hinge side by the carpenter's boy. The windows? The sash pulleys sing the same tired song. The paint is unbroken. A locked night latch holds. No balcony, no ledge. The garden wall is 12 feet. The soil below shows no scuff, only frost bitten flat. He pauses, reflects. Impossible is a word people love before breakfast. He orders a search of the rest of the house, beginning with any door that people forgot because it never opens. Servants bring keys and fears and the kind of loyalty that looks like silence from a distance. Clue 1. The rear mews gate lock is new, replaced in October after a run of burglaries in Mayfair. Had the insurance men making rounds, lecturing about bolts, chains, and a new American-style cylinder lock that cannot be jimmied by a knife. The policy rider is dated 6th of October 1926 and carries a premium deduction for increased security. The butler keeps the mews key on his ring. No other keys were cut. That is what the ledger says, and ledgers sometimes lie. Clue 2. The family solicitor, Mr. Godfrey Hawes, arrived on Friday afternoon with a draft addendum to Eleanor's trust. Witnesses, Hawes, Mr. Crawford, and a clerk who left his glove on a hall table, a glove later found in the umbrella stand. The addendum would grant Eleanor a degree of control on her 23rd birthday in January, £10,000 a year to do with as she pleased. A generous emancipation in an ungenerous age. Clue 3. Ash in the hearth includes fibers from thick, cotton-wove paper, the kind used for letters. The maid swears that when she brought hot water at 11:48 p.m., a sealed letter rested on the desk. It is gone now. The ash says where. The inspector casts his net wider, as yardmen had done in headline cases, like the American heiress Dorothy Arnold years earlier. Another young woman with means who vanished from a bright city in December daylight and never came back. A case that taught investigators about the tyranny of absence and the appetite of crowds for impossible stories. He notes the parallel not as proof, but as a reminder. Wealth does not immune one from becoming a rumor. Red herring 1. A set of scuff marks on the inside of the third-floor sash. The carpenter's boy swears they're new. The butler swears they've always been there. The inspector tests the latch, tries the sash weight, and confirms what any house painter could have told him. Old wood complains in ways that look like clues. Red herring 2. A taxi driver claims to have seen a young woman matching Eleanor's description at Victoria Station at 6:10 a.m. Hat low, without a maid. But the station master's log for the early trains shows no woman traveling alone purchased a first-class ticket in that window. The ledger shows fares as numbers only, no faces. Between rumor and record, he chooses record. Tension peak 1 arrives by midweek when the press names it. The Vanishing Heiress of Belgrave Square. A locked room mystery, headlines purr, invoking the fiction shelves and the puzzle stories that Londoners love for evening trains. Murders in sealed pavilions. Impossible bullets that pass through stone. Doors locked with keys on the wrong side. Real cases sometimes borrow the stagecraft of stories, and this one seems to audition for it, leaning into the impossibility. Specifics matter. The inspector gets them. On Tuesday, December 1st, a locksmith named Willis is asked to examine the front door hardware. He confirms that with the key left in the inner side of the third-floor study lock, the door cannot be opened by a spare from the hall. He demonstrates the wire-through-the-plate trick the carpenter used. It only works inward, not from the hall side with the plate intact. It is not perfect security, but it is good enough to make a quick entry unlikely. He requests bank records through the family solicitor. Eleanor drew £5 on Friday afternoon. No further withdrawals. A jewelry inventory shows nothing missing. The safe in Mr. Crawford's study is closed and untouched. The family chauffeur was off that night. The rolls stayed in the mews. Staff registers are inspected. No one new joined within 30 days. Pause and reflect. An impossible disappearance often hides a very human motive. Locked room mysteries in fiction are performances. In life, they are often the byproducts of fear, control, or shame, dressed up in bolts and chains. Sometimes the most secure rooms are the ones we build inside ourselves. And even those develop a hidden door when the pressure mounts. Tension Peak 2 comes with the discovery of a scrap the ash did not fully eat. A torn margin with two legible words, reversed by heat but readable in raked light. Men love gardens. The inspector thinks of Liverpool, of an infamous call that sent a husband to a non-existent address, a trick of misdirection that ended with a woman dead in a locked home, and a city divided forever about guilt and proof. The parallel is chilling, not conclusive, but it suggests that names and streets can be tools as sharp as knives. The solicitor, Hawes, turns pale when shown the scrap. He admits, reluctantly, that Eleanor had been approached by a Mr. Q over tea at the Ritz 3 weeks earlier, a man who hinted at knowing of an investment in wireless sets that could make her a fortune independent of the trust. He was persistent, Hawes says. I told her to ignore it. The name, if he ever gave one, is now Ash. The Ritz confirms only that Miss Crawford sat with an older gentleman on the 10th of November at 4:30, a notation in a booking ledger that records times and tables, not the truth. By the end of the second week, the house has become a stage no one wants to perform on. Staff whisper about a second door, a servant's passage forgotten by architects in memory, or a dumbwaiter shaft big enough for a child. The inspector measures. The chalk lines say no. The only dumbwaiter runs between basement and pantry. It could not bear a person. The coal chute in the mews is narrow, a clutter of soot and iron. He returns to the study, sits at the desk as Eleanor must have sat, and looks at the room not as a puzzle but as a person's last known choice. The scarf on the chair back is the light one she wore for reading. The fur-lined wrap by the door is for outdoors. The shoes gone are evening heels, not walking boots. If she left under her own power, she chose badly for the weather. If she was taken, someone chose for her and took only what was at hand. Then a break of a kind only bureaucracy can provide. The insurance writer's fine print requires a second inspection after installation of the new locks, and the inspector's report, filed 20th October, notes a defect in the third-floor study window. The night latch, installed misaligned, fails to fully seat unless the sash is pressed firmly rightward while lowering. It will appear latched to a cursory touch, but can be teased open with steady pressure from outside if a hand can reach the interior rail. The report recommends correction at earliest convenience. No one corrected it. A misseated latch is not an exit by itself. The third-floor window drops to open air, but directly below, a narrow wrought iron rain pipe runs from gutter to garden. It is not a ladder, but it is something. The inspector stares at the line, at the soot smear near the sill, and asks for rope. At dusk, the inspector's constable descends from the roof with a scuffed palm and a grin he's not proud of. Possible, he says. Not wise, but possible. With a looped rope and a boot wedged to the rain pipe, a person could hang and swing a shoulder enough to press the misseated latch from outside, if a hand or a thin tool threaded just so between the sash and frame. Getting in would be hard. Getting out would be harder unless someone had a line from above. But people in stories have done more for less, and people in life, when desperate, will try. The inspector reconstructs the sequence that fits the facts and the physics without breaking the world into magic. The letter burned after midnight, the fire still warm but ash fine by morning, suggests a last-minute change in plan, a message destroyed or an invitation canceled. The key left in the inside lock could be a habit or a precaution, but in a locked room case, habits are weapons. A key left inside forces entry from the hinge, creating the illusion of a sealed chamber when the real action happened not at the door, but at the window. He imagines two theologies of escape. In the first, Eleanor goes willingly out the window to a Confederate above. A line from roof to sill, a silent pull into the November night. a descent down the rain pipe to the garden, then over the mews wall with assistance, and into a car waiting with a soft running engine. In the second, more tragic version, she tests the misseated latch herself, curious, nervous, or tempted, leans out to see if the pipe could bear weight, slips and falls 3 stories to the frosted lawn where a Confederate panics and carries her away rather than summon a scandal. Both honor the facts. Neither can be proven without a body. But then a clerk at a wireless shop in Holborn, spurred by the reward notice, produces a repair ticket for a small crystal set purchased in late October by a Miss E.C., address withheld at customer request, paid cash. The ticket includes a note, "Inquire after Menlove catalog," a nonsense phrase at first glance, and a private reminder at second. Menlove, a planted breadcrumb, a private joke referencing an infamous hoax address in Liverpool that lured a man away while his wife died at home. Someone liked the theater of impossible crimes enough to speak in code. Someone wanted the locked room aura as a shroud. The inspector walks the last mile in his head and then in his boots. The Ritz confirms again the November tea with the older gentleman. The solicitor yields to embarrassment. Mr. Hawes had warned Eleanor that men with schemes would circle as her 23rd birthday approached. The family's trust structure ensured that until January, any substantial movement of capital required Mr. Crawford's consent. The timing is a vice. He drafts a statement that reads like an answer and like a question. The probable mechanism, the misaligned night latch exploited from the outside with assistance, allowed entry or exit without breaking the sash, creating a facsimile of a sealed room once the latch was gently receded and the sash set down. The key left in the door compounded the illusion by preventing hall-side entry with a spare. The front door bolts and chain, logged at 12:05 a.m., held like a theater curtain on a stage that had already been emptied by a trap door in the light well. And the motive? Freedom, with or without love. Perhaps a man promising wireless riches and independence, perhaps simply the promise of being believed as a person rather than obeyed as an asset. The ash in the hearth swallows the letter that might have told it straight. The rope fibers on the gutter, if they ever existed, are gone with the next rain. The car that might have waited in the mews becomes a story told by a constable who is sure he remembers a purr at 12:20, but will not swear it to a magistrate. Real locked room mysteries have endings like this: plausible, incomplete, and profoundly human in their incompletion. Immediate aftermath. The household freezes like a photograph. Mr. Crawford hires private men whose names later resemble legend. Pinkerton-style investigators whose fame grew from earlier heiress cases that produced more column inches than answers. And they walk Belgravia counting steps and doors, asking porters to describe the night air like it had a scent they could bottle and analyze. They find nothing that the inspector has not already found. A window that lies about being latched, a pipe that overpromises its strength, and a room that was never magic after all. In the end, there is no arrest. There is no body. There is only an understanding that the locked-in locked room was a trick of craftsmanship and complacency, and that the door everyone watched was never the true exit. The file closes, as so many do, under a word that newspapers hate and families live with: missing. Years later, building inspectors in London would standardize window latch alignment checks after insurance underwriters documented multiple failures where misseated night latches created false security. A mundane footnote that reads, in context, like an epitaph for a case that never gave up its subject. Meanwhile, the press moved on. But Belgrave Square remembered. Servants told newer servants about the heiress who locked herself in and walked out, a parable about doors and attention. The social impact is quieter but deeper. The case entered drawing room vocabulary, mentioned alongside earlier disappearances like Dorothy Arnold's, when people wanted to warn daughters that wealth and safety are not synonyms, that cities can swallow the careful as easily as the careless, and that impossible rooms aren't impossible so much as uninterrogated. It isn't justice, but it is a kind of literacy. The moral question lingers. When does security become theater? And when does theater become a trap? If a life is arranged like a locked room, bolts, chains, signatures, what forms of escape are forgivable, and at what cost to those left behind? There are no tidy answers, only a window that wasn't as closed as it seemed.
Don't forget to subscribe to Real Mystery Reports for more strange, dark, and profoundly human stories. New true mysteries every day.